Ladies and gentlemen, a special interview now with Francesca Schuler, CEO of InShape Health Clubs. InShape have a huge portfolio of clubs across California and the US, and Francesca has been leading the brand to new growth over these past few years. She's also a founding member of the California Fitness Alliance, a group joined to unify the industry's voice throughout the pandemic and beyond. A great conversation with Francesca will follow. A quick word now from our sponsors, and then we'll get stuck straight in. Francesca, thank you very much for joining us here. It's great at last to see facilities reopen in California. No doubt you're incredibly happy at this. How are things at InShape? And I suppose on the back of this reopening, how are you seeing member trends? What behaviors, what trends are you now seeing as your clubs reopen?
Well, thank you for having me, Ross. It's always a pleasure to join you in conversation. I will have to say I am happy to finally not be the only person shut down, the only state that's shut down in the country. So we feel like we're finally part of the reopening crew. So it has been a long time. California really started reopening March, I would say, in April. We're still quite restricted in most counties, but all counties in California do allow some fitness in some capacity. So everyone's doors can open. So it's interesting on the member front. We're seeing a few trends. I kind of break it into four buckets, really five, but four primary ones. There's definitely the members that are back at it. They sort of never left us. They joined us in our outdoor, under our tents. They did digital, and they're just happy to be back in the club. I think their frustration is they want all their amenities, and we still have all these ridiculous rules by county. So there's a little frustration there, and we're still wearing masks in California. But for the most part, just grateful and happy and back at it, and honestly probably didn't miss too much of a beat. So the back at it people we're really grateful for who stuck with us. The second group for us is the people who used to work out quite actively and kind of went on hiatus. And that's the group we're really focused on helping, quite frankly. How do we motivate them? We even have them call us. We've had emails, I'm trying, I don't really know, it's been a long time. And so we're creating a whole series of events for those people. So there's a group of people, I think, who used to do it, but are struggling with motivation to get back at it again. A lot of that is things like working remotely. You don't commute anymore, so you don't swing by your studio or your club. So motivation's key for that group, and we're focused on that. The third group, which I'm really excited to see, is we're having a lot of people, a lot of actually more senior members coming in who have not been working out or members of a fitness center before, and who are excited to start because they realize how much health matters. And that, I hope that group grows and grows and grows, because for me, that's the biggest opportunity for all of us, is really introducing an exercise lifestyle to people who may not have exercised before for a long time. So we are definitely getting some of those. And our focus with that group of members is, how do we help you get started? And then there's still a group of members that are still afraid. They are, afraid to come back, despite no real data or science saying that health clubs are a place to get COVID. They are still afraid and are waiting it out. So those are the four big buckets that we have. So with those members, we're still engaging digitally and reassuring them of safety and waiting for them patiently.
Now, you've had the opportunity throughout the pandemic to go away and think about the future of InShape? What does that look like? What does that feel like to members? You could remodel, you could reposition, you could reconceptualize, but it really all comes down to what experiences are you going to give your members going forward, Francesca? What are you and perhaps other operators you've been speaking to, how are you reevaluating or re-looking at the club experience and what that looks like going forward?
Yeah, great question. There's been a lot of discussion around this, a lot of discussion around digital. It's been interesting during this last year how there's been this focus on sort of one versus the other, at home versus the club, which I find quite frustrating. I'm an and not or person. And so one of the big things I see is really the broadening of the definition of the word club, a true health club, which is, in my opinion, kind of an omni-channel platform where you really do meet members where they are. And I think we have always said that we're member focused as an industry. I think that's debatable in some parts, but now there is no excuse to not be member focused and really meet members where they are. So that's everything from obviously offering digital if they don't want to come to the club or can't come to the club, offering a great experience in the club, outdoor events, things like that. So I think that's one of the biggest shifts is there's no longer a discussion around should we or shouldn't we participate in different channels. You have to participate in all of them. You have to really truly be a omni-channel club. By the way, not new. I mean, retail's done this. There's other categories that have done this. So this is not trailblazing. It's just for our industry, it's now time. And we're talking about ourselves as a true kind of omni-channel fitness platform that's a health club. So club in the broadest sense of the word. I think the second thing is really thinking about the role of technology, because technology is an interesting thing. I think there's a part of technology that's let's all chase the bright, shiny object. Then there's sort of, oh, we don't need technology. We'll just do it old school. And what we're really focused on, and it accelerated a digital transformation we had started pre-COVID, but really thinking about where should technology be used to empower the member on something they want to do on their own, whether that's adjusting their own account or finding a workout for 10 minutes versus having to ask a trainer. So the role of technology in empowering the member and giving them a great experience, and then really over-investing in where the team member interactions happen. And that balance, I think, is something that we all need to look at because technology is critical. It has efficiencies, but can also be very expensive and not helpful if not used well. So we are really spending a lot of time thinking about the holistic experience. We've mapped our member journeys inside the club, outside the club, and thinking about the role of technology and enhancing that and making sure we don't hang on to old ways of doing things where we used to have a person doing it just because we always did it that way. We've changed a lot of that. But what that's allowed us to do is then overinvest in our team in some areas because we've been closed for off and on for 13 months. And we had some clubs that we did not open for 9 months. And it has been extraordinary to see how many of all of our general managers, we had every single general manager come back and a huge percentage of their teams came back because of them. So investing in your team becomes more and more important. But to do that, you have to also find different ways to do things, use technology. So that balance between people and technology in the experience, I think, is a new way of doing things. And I think community is really essential. Our theme for the month of May at InShape is reconnect, because as we emerge from this, I think we all need to, we're all rusty. I used the analogy of the Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz on a team meeting the other day. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but he's, kind of been rusted for a year, and Dorothy comes along and oils him up and he's like, kind of squeaking through it. And I think we all feel a little bit that way running a business that's open again. And so reconnection is so important. And I think thinking about that from a meaningful way, not just a fitness way. So finding things that are broader than just a fitness event, but really have outreach into the community. An example for us is we had a longtime team member pass away recently who was just an incredible human being, really larger than life. And so she was a big pickleball player. So we are doing our first big pickleball tournament in her honor and broadening the spirit of it versus just doing an event. So I think that's another way we're thinking more and more about meaningful experiences, not just fitness experiences. And I think the last thing is pricing, which I'll talk about. There was all this conversation about HVLP HVLP is really a pricing strategy primarily, right? It gives you different ways to access the club. If you use certain amenities, you have a lower price point. If you use full service, you have a higher price point. And I think we're seeing more of that. And it goes back to being member centric, meeting members where they are. I think all of us in the end are going to have some version of that. And that's not because we're trying to be an HVLP player. It's just we've got to meet members where they are and give them what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. And so I think that impacts everything from tech to people to pricing to experiences.
I love the acknowledgement to your former colleague, Francesca. That's very touching. Let's delve inside the mind of a leader, because, of course, there's a lot of transitional change that's happening in our industry. You've gone from a perhaps growth mindset, moving into crisis management, and then coming out of that back into growth mindset. You've gone from physical into digital and now into hybrid. There's so much happening. What are your thoughts in terms of some of these transitional challenges that are now impacting the executives of companies and, of course, their daily lives and their decision making?
Great question. I have spent really the last month really focused on this area. Partially, I've struggled. There's something about crisis management, as hard as it is. It's like you're doing battle every day, and you sort of get into this zone of what's the next crisis, and I can solve, and we got this, and we're doing this. And as you open, you have to then sort of go back to looking out longer term and making sure that you're doing things with both a longer term and a shorter term perspective. And as I said earlier, we're all a little rusty in that. So I think for me, the first part of this is make sure we give ourselves as leaders and give our leaders time to reconnect and space to reconnect with themselves in a new way as a leader, kind of emerging from a crisis, with their teams, with their members, and with their communities. And, we've made that the theme of this month at InShape, as I mentioned earlier, in part because it's Mental Health Awareness Month in the US. I don't know if that's a global month or not, but probably should know that. But it was a good time for me to step back and make sure that as a leader, we gave the organization space. And if I could say one thing that I think how important that is, because, one of the most overused words, in my opinion, and the ones I hate the least, is the word pivot. Everyone sort of prides themselves on pivoting. And pivoting can be good and pivoting can be bad, but you're trying to rebuild an industry, a club, a team, a company. You got to build it on a foundation where people feel reconnected again. So I would say the first thing is give ourselves and our teams time to reconnect. So that's been very top of mind for us as a leadership team. I think the second thing has been continue to be member focused. I spoke a little bit about that, but at the end of the day, we're in the people business. I say this all the time. We are in the motivating people business. We are not in the equipment business. We're not in the digital business. I don't even know what that means, being in the digital business, right? We are in the people business. Our job is to motivate people to live healthy and happy. So don't lose sight of that and figure out ways to connect with your people. I think the third I talked about a little bit was this idea of empowering members through technology. I think our members are struggling a lot with how to reemerge. So let's think about how we can be helpful for them. Let's not assume that they're going to pick up the same habits they were. They may need help in different ways. They may need to be communicated to in different ways. So again, really taking time to talk to them. Where are you? What do you need? How can we help? So that's another one. The big one for me, once we get through this sort of reconnect phase, is we really have to think about our industry as a health industry and revisit all the ways that we're not communicating being a health industry. And the way I think about it is fitness is about vanity, it's about performance, it's about health. But the big real reason we're in this is for health, right? It's for long-term health. And yet all of our messaging tends to focus on vanity and performance, which appeals to the top of the pyramid. At InShape, we've always only used our members and our team members in our advertising. They do our radio ads, they're in all our imagery. And we do that intentionally because we want to communicate that exercise is accessible to everybody. And as an industry, I've been a little disappointed how quickly, as we emerge from pandemic, people have gone back to the booty boot camp and the powerlifting this and whatever. And it's like, okay, didn't we just spend a year talking about how fitness is essential and we're all about health? Yet we immediately went back to that. And that group of people that needs that, they've been working out this whole time. So that's a big thing we're thinking about as a leadership team, is constantly kind of challenging our assumptions on how do we make sure that it's health first and kind of everything else second. I would say the next thing is be good at some things. There has been a temptation during this time to say we have to be into wellness, we have to be into mindfulness, we have to be into diet, we have to be all about health. And no one's good at everything. So we're really thinking about, where do we fit in the health and wellness ecosystem? And then finding partners. I call them co-collaborators, like who are co-collaborators with our shared mission and how we do it. I mean, we're very much a premium player in secondary markets. So we focus on very diverse communities that many other companies don't focus on. There are some that do. Who are our co-collaborators in that community and serving them? So making sure we don't try to all become wellness companies overnight and do everything. You pick the things we're good at, and then let's find our co-collaborators to really round out our wellness offering and help the communities that we serve be healthier.
Yeah,
those are all the things I'm thinking about.
No, it's
and
very
trying to make some
holistic
money again.
is a big word. I don't think everyone can be holistic. I think it's about choosing, like you say, your areas of expertise, doubling down on those, and then borrowing the rest. I think that's probably the best strategy. Let's look at perhaps workforce, Francesca, because over the past 12 months, inevitably, we've seen huge drainage of the talent pool through furloughs, through discontinuing of employment contracts. And of course, people have inevitably left this industry to try and find money-making jobs in other roles. As we try and rebuild this industry, how do we do that? How do we reconnect with those that we've lost? How do we make sure that we're building the talent pool so that we can grow as demand increases?
Great question. So if you were to ever attend any of the company meetings at InShape, you will hear several themes. And one of them is that the general manager is the most important job in our company. And we are all here to serve the general manager because they serve the club teams and the members. And I cannot reiterate that more now than I have in the past. It is essential to make sure that the leader you put in your club, your studio, is rewarded, empowered, engaged. All of our general managers have stayed with us, which is amazing. And our gratitude to them is extraordinary. And a lot of our teams have come back because of them. And so don't lose sight of that in the sort of panic of how do I staff, how do I get back going, is keep focus on how important that general manager role is. I think the second thing is going back to what I said earlier about communicating health as a message. It's often people think, look, I say this all the time. If you had asked me like 10 years ago, would I be working in this industry? I would have said, what am I going to do at the gym? I literally would have answered you that way. And so I think making sure that as we communicate through recruiting, that we're reinforcing that we're in the health business, not just in the fitness business, and that we want people who are passionate about fitness, not because they're bodybuilders or Spartan runners or marathon runners, but because they understand the value of exercise in people's lives and they want to share that. And I think that's been something that has helped us a lot in recruiting, is really going after that make the world a better place message versus just, do you love fitness? I think the word fitness can be quite intimidating to people. So that's a second thing. I think communicating the message of career versus jobs, and linked closely to that is diversity. We are a great industry for men, women, single parents, married couples, singles, all stages of life, seniors. And often the way we approach recruiting, we don't necessarily communicate that. And so really sharing that we can be an industry where you can build a career and you can grow into leadership will be important. And also that we can provide flexibility for a lot of people, which right now really matters with schools being closed or partially open, et cetera. Actually, our industry is, great for a lot of flexibility. So reinforcing that message, I think, will be critical for us as an industry to make sure we attract talent. So those are some of the things that I think hold true, but ultimately, our teams have been through an extraordinarily challenging past year. So retention is top of mind. And that goes back to give people time to recover. You have to give them space to do that, because if you keep the team that went through this year with you, you will get lots of other people to join the team. And so retention for me is my number one priority, quite frankly. I'm focused mostly on that because I know if keep the amazing people that hang in with us this long, they will attract more amazing people to rebuild.
Well, it's great to hear, Francesca. You've kept so much of the core team around. It will inevitably pay dividends going forward. Let me try and dovetail the next couple of questions together, which focuses on, fitness as part of the health industry. We've struggled. I mean, I think we've seen that globally to be recognized as an essential service. I think there's been fantastic groups involved. Of course, you are a founding member of the California Fitness Alliance, who've done an incredible job of trying to bring a unified voice to government about the importance and the benefits that we have. We've seen the same in Singapore and Australia and Hong Kong and across the world. Sadly, a lot of the time it has fallen on perhaps, frustratingly deaf ears. But again, we have to keep on chiming in with that message. What are your thoughts in terms of what we can do individually, collectively as groups, collectively as a global industry to try and make sure that we are seen and recognized as an essential service?
Yeah, great question. I wish I had the answer because this has been one of, the hardest parts for all of us on this is we sort of no one disagrees that exercise is not important. I think the trade-offs have been between safety and fitness. That's really been the trade-off. And as you think about public health, they've been so focused on safety vis-a-vis COVID that they have not been able to make the trade-offs in the bigger picture, which I think is going to actually cause a lot more health pandemics that we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg on, but we're all aware of that. And it's the same idea of prevention versus treatment. There's this huge narrative around treatment, but very little discussion around prevention. And I think some opportunities for us are to be very thoughtful about the language that we use and the fight that we fight. I think in the beginning, it was very much like fitness is essential. Well, fitness as a word itself, as I said earlier, can be quite intimidating to people. It is really just exercise or movement, just moving is essential. So get moving, and you can move in different ways. And that's one. I think two, being open to having exercise be available everywhere, inside, outside, et cetera. As we reopen, we need to broaden our definition of where exercise and fitness happens, because if we do that, it'll make it more top of mind and more people seeing us as essential, I think. It's hard when you're in the trenches, and it's hard because of the pain we've all felt. But I do think broadening our definition of fitness to be exercise or movement and let's just get moving will be really important. I think that a narrative on prevention is one that is hard to get traction on, but we're starting to use that word a lot more, or the idea of, longevity, or the idea of starting life healthy and focusing on kids. So trying to introduce the word kind of prevention so you don't have issues versus how fast can you run. I think, again, we get so caught up in performance and, serving that top of the pyramid that we need to work together to just focus on a democratic message around the importance of fitness. I think another thing that would be really important is to collaborate more with, as an industry. It still surprises me to this day, we still, at least in the US, have multiple groups lobbying for the same things. And I don't think we're working as closely as we could with our, equipment partners and apparel manufacturers. I mean, fitness apparel has been on fire this year, yet they're never in our dialogue with us, but it's in their best interest to, have exercise become more and more part of people's lives. So somehow we have to, create kind of a movement, I think, where we unify everybody involved in exercise, in a more powerful way. I don't have the answer to that. I do think it's going to take, this idea of creating a movement or catalyzing a movement we have to think about it that way, and not how do I drive my business a gym? It has to be, how do we catalyze a movement around health? Because, during this process, no public health officer has said, I disagree that exercise is essential. Nobody ever said that. They're like, oh yeah, we totally agree, but ... safety of COVID is more important. And somehow we have to help people understand the trade-offs of being safe versus being healthy, I guess, is the best way I can describe it. So I don't have a great answer. For me, it goes back to, as an industry talking about health and less about vanity and performance. It goes back to being open to collaborating with people we may never have collaborated before. It goes back to really focusing on a prevention message versus exercise is essential, and being willing to do things that, like Dove. I used this analogy in a previous discussion I had. Dove took on the beauty industry. They said, we're tired of models that are thin and unrealistic women's body types. And they launched this great Dove beauty campaign, which I think was genius. We kind of need something like that, I think, around exercise and its role in health. And it can't just be In Shape, or it can't just be, a yoga chain or a studio chain that does it. We kind of have to work together on it. So hopefully we're starting that. I think our alliances are a great place to start. I think there's a lot of good conversation happening. And my hope is we will catalyze a movement to move, really, is what we need to do. A movement to move is what I want to do somehow.
One final closing thought, Francesca, before we wrap up here. Let's look at the last 12 months for you personally. You've obviously, it's been very challenging. It's been very frustrating at some parts and revealing at others and rewarding. You've really gone through a myriad of emotions. What are you positively taking out of these last 12 months, whether it's in business or life or love? What are you taking the good, and how are you moving that forward?
You're going to make me cry. I'm a big crier. So, look, I say this to many who have asked a similar question. One, I feel incredibly grateful that on a personal front, I have not had to suffer what many have suffered, whether losing somebody to COVID, a child who's handled quarantine really badly. I feel so grateful. So one of the things I'm taking forward is just sheer gratitude. But I actually, I have seen, extraordinary things from people. I've seen some bad things that have annoyed me, but I have seen people put themselves so on the back burner for the greater good. People who work for us, people in our community, people who are helping fight the front lines on things. And so while, and particularly in the US, we are very much a country that's quite divided at the moment, I emerge from this with more optimism, and I'm an optimistic person on the sort of human spirit. I do. And I do think that we are going to get through this, and the hindsight on it will show that, together is better than divided. But there's some really amazing people in the world. And I think if you keep that in mind, that there are people that are willing to do almost anything that will have an extraordinary impact, and you want to work with more of them, give back to more of them, hopefully be one of them or partially be one of them. Day by day, we will make the world, better. And I don't adhere to going back to normal. I don't even know what normal means. There is no normal, in my opinion. I think the two things that have been frustrating, the people are like, I want to go back to normal. I was like, what do you call normal? And the other highly annoying group of people, it's like, let's make the new normal better than before. And I'm like, okay, we're just trying to survive right now. But I do think there's many that just, in their little actions and their big actions, have been extraordinary. I've been the recipient of those as well. So I emerged very optimistic about us as a human race, I guess. And despite the pain we're feeling right now, I think we will be moving forward in a positive way over time. May not feel that way right now, but we will.
100% agree, Francesca. I think that's a great place to end on. We believe in good people doing good things to achieve good outcomes. Thank you very much for your time, Francesca. I really enjoyed the chat and look forward to seeing you face to face soon.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for having me. It was great to see you on Zoom.